Hi viewers, in this class we are going to discuss the temporal fossae in reptiles. Presence of temporal fossae consisting of temporal fossae is the important feature of the reptilian skull. The vacuities are temporal fossae present in the temporal region. They provide space for the attachment of the bulging jaw muscles, and the class Reptilia divided into 5 major groups based on presence and absence of the temporal fossae. They are Anapsida, Euryapsida, Parapsida, Synapsida and Diapsida. Based on the presence and absence of the temporal fossae, the class Reptilia get classified into 5 groups: Anapsida, Euryapsida, Parapsida, Synapsida and Diapsida. See here there are different bones in the skull, upper jaw and the skull, namely premaxilla, which is shown by this color. So we have to see the color when we are talking about the bone. Nasal bones, maxilla, lacrimal bone, prefrontal, frontal, jugal bone, postfrontal, parietal bone, postorbital, squamosal, supratemporal, postparietal, tabular and the quadratojugal bones. These are the different bones which form the skull and the upper jaw. Then coming to the Anapsida skull. The reptiles with solid skull roof without any temporal fossae behind the eye. Ana means absence. Ana means absence of opposites or temporal fossae in the skull. Such kind of solid skull is seen in 2 orders of the reptiles, class Reptilia. The survival order, presently living order, is the Chelonia, whereas the extinct order, that is Cartilosauria. Chelonians and the extinct Cartilosaurians tend to have the Anapsida type of skull. Here there is no opposite at all, there is no temporal fossae at all behind the eye orbit or eye. And see the specialties of the Anapsida type of skull. Temporal fossae are absent, and it is the most primitive type of skull when compared to remaining all the 4 types of skulls. It is most primitive type of skull and found in extinct forms like the Cartilosaurians. The best example is the Simuria, and one more specialty of the Simuria is it is the connecting link in between the amphibians and as well as the reptiles. Simuria is the connecting link in between amphibians and the reptiles. And the survival organisms, presently living organisms, they have Chelonians have the Anapsida type of skull. In the Chelonia, freshwater terrapins, marine water turtles and terrestrial testudos were included. So all of them, they are surviving now. And another specialty of the Anapsida skull, here it is monorhina. Mono means single, rhina means respiratory aperture, external nostril. If the skull has only one nostril, presence of one nostril, monorhina, it is also the specialty of the Anapsida. And quadrate is immovable, it is unable to move. And one more thing, upon the jaws there are no teeth, absence of teeth, and there is a covering of horny sheath over the jaw. See here, this is the nasal cavity nostril. This is the eye orbit, and here there are no opposites at all. There are no temporal fossae. So all the turtles, tortoises, terrapins, testudos, all of them, they have the anopsid skull. Then they have the edentate jaws, no teeth on the jaws. So this is the testudo. These are the oldest known reptiles, the turtles, and extinct Permian forms like the cartilosaurians. Coming to the second one, Euryapsida type of skull. It was seen in extinct reptiles. Euryapsida type of skull found in the extinct reptiles. Euryapsida skull, they with a single dorsolateral temporal opening on either side, bounded below by postorbital and the squamosal bones. There is a single dorsolateral temporal opening on either side, each side one. And this temporal fossae surrounded below by postorbital bone, that is the bone behind the eye orbit, and the squamosal bone. Here you can see this is the nostril, and this is the eye orbit, and this is the temporal fossae. This is the temporal fossae surrounded below by postorbital bone and as well as the squamosal bone. So this kind of skull found in extinct reptiles. Euryapsida skull found in extinct reptiles. Coming to the Parapsida type of skull, this was also found in extinct forms. What are the specialties of the Parapsida skull? One pair of temporal vacuities, one on either side. Each side one temporal fossae is present. Each temporal vacuity is bounded by postfrontal and supratemporal below and parietal above. Below it is bounded by postfrontal bone and the supratemporal bone, whereas the above side it is covered by parietal bone. Then it was found in extinct reptiles of the orders like Ichthyosauria, Plesiosauria, and Protosauria. Ichthyosaurians, Plesiosaurians, and the Protosaurians are the animals that contain Parapsida type of skull, but they were no more now. They were extinct forms. So this is the nostril, and this is the eye orbit, and this is the, so each side one, this side one, and other side one more temporal fossae is present. Okay, so the below side you can see the postfrontal and as well as the supratemporal, whereas the above side it is covered by the parietal. P means parietal bone. And coming to the next one, Synopsida type of skull, it was also seen in the extinct forms. So here one pair of temporal fossae are present, one on the either side, each bounded by the postorbital and the squamosal above and by the jugal and squamosal below. So above is covered by postorbital bone and the squamosal bone, whereas the below side jugal bone and as well as the squamosal bone. Found in extinct reptiles of the order Pelicosauria. So they were no more. In the extinct mammal-like reptiles, temporal fossae become progressively wider and higher so that the parietal bone formed its dorsal boundary. This is also one specialty of the extinct mammal-like reptiles. See here, this is the nostril, this is the eye orbit, and this is the temporal fossae. Right? So this is the jugal bone, is the quadratojugal bone, it's the squamosal bone, and postorbital bone, this is the parietal bone. This is the quadrate, it's the quadratojugal. Then in the diapsida type of skull with two temporal fossae on either side, separated by the bar of post-orbital and the squamosal bones. So that is, post-orbital bone and the squamosal bone separates the either side temporal fossae. Typical diapsid skull found in the extinct dinosaurs. Extinct dinosaurs which were extinct, they have the typical diapsid type of skull. It still persists in the rhynchocephalia and crocodilia, whereas the lizards and snakes, they have the modified diapsid skull. So how the modification has been done? Lizards have lost the quadratojugal bone. Snakes have lost the quadratojugal, jugal and postorbital bones. The modification in lizards and snakes has made the quadrate free to have movable articulation with the otic capsule, allowing greater freedom of movement of jaws. So here this is the modified diapsid type of skull. See, di means two apsida temporal fossae, each side two temporal fossae. So here this is the nostril and this is the eye orbit, and this is the two are the temporal fossae. Both the temporal fossae here, they are separated by postorbital bone and as well as the squamosal bone. So it is below surrounded by jugal and the quadratojugal, and whereas the first one surrounded above by the parietal bone. See, if we compare all of them, anapsida, no apsida at all. Synapsida, one on either side, one temporal fossa on either side, but it is located at below side. Whereas the uriapsida, the one temporal fossa on each side, it is located just above, behind and above the eye orbit, here below and backside of the eye orbit. And if you observe the diapsida, two are there on either side, and both of them, one above and one below, it is arranged backside to the eye orbit. Anapsida, synapsida, diapsida and uriapsida skulls. Here also the same, anapsida, synapsida, uriapsida and diapsida. So based upon these only, reptiles have been classified into various categories: anapsida, parapsida, diapsida and synapsida. No temporal fossa in anapsida, single upper temporal fossa in parapsida, two temporal fossa in diapsida, single lower temporal fossa in synapsida. Apart from the anapsida, the living order is Chelonia. Apart from the diapsida, the living orders are Rhynchocephalia, Squamata and Crocodilia. Squamata again divided into suborders like the Lacertilia and Ophidia. So these all are the temporal fossae and their classification based on the temporal fossae. Thank you one and all.